We are continuing our media day coverage from Wednesday. On today's show, we are going to discuss what Matthew Tkachuk, Aleksander Barkov, and Sergei Bobrovsky had to say as the Florida Panthers are set to begin training camp on Thursday.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, September 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. You can subscribe to the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. So, Florida Panthers fans, we are continuing our media day coverage from Wednesday's media day at Emirates Bank Arena. Still having a hard time getting used to saying that. I noticed that even with talking about Emirates Bank on Wednesday's episode with Jacob Winans, that I said FLA Live Arena like once or twice. So yeah, it's gonna get a lot of getting used to as far as that. But if you want to listen to part one of Media Day coverage, check back into your podcast feed, and it'll be It was posted before this one. So if you haven't already, pause this and go back to that one and listen to what we had to say first prior to that. But let's continue our coverage on Media Day. And like I said in the first one, this was not in or I'm the way I'm structuring this is not in the exact order of the players who appeared. So this one is about the more highlighted players on the Panthers: Matthew Tkachuk, Aleksander Barkov, and Sergei Bobrovsky. But Matthew Tkachuk was in fact the very first person to speak at Media Day on Wednesday morning. So Matthew Tkachuk spoke about his summer. Obviously, a lot of you have seen the video of him and Brady Tkachuk taking the face-off at the NHL media tour in Las Vegas. Spoke about how he's ready to go and all that, and talk about he said a quote at the Panthers Golf Classic and used that same quote on media day about guys who are just chomping at the bit and all that, and just the guys who are just prepared to just get on the ice as well. Spoke about how it was in the easiest of summers for Matthew Tkachuk, dealing with the broken sternum. There was some upper body work that he had a hard time doing as far as that, but he said the last month has been great, and that has really accelerated his rehab as far as the summer. And something that we kind of wondered, at least me, Jacob, and others, was what if going into the first few days of training camp, how much of the intensity is going to be the same as last season in the first few days, knowing that Paul Maurice last season was going into his first year there and wanted to send a message immediately. And Matthew Tkachuk was asked about that, and Matthew Tkachuk said, if I were a betting man, that the intensity is going to be just as much as last year. So we kind of got an answer to that, but we'll know more once training camp does kick off tomorrow. Today, when this episode drops, when the Panthers take the ice at 9 a.m. at the Ice Den in Coral Springs. Also, Matthew Tkachuk spoke about how much he hates talking about last year because not only did they not win the cup, but if you're just so stuck on last year, you're only going to stay there mentally there. But it is going to be a great opportunity to build on creating something more special as far as sending a message to the rest of the league that this Broward County, South Florida is that destination franchise that has been for the last 3 to 4 years as well. And spoke about how with personal accomplishments, how much better can it get for him. And Matthew Tkachuk, this one I really liked as far as this answer. And spoke about how it's not always about just the points that you get. He said that he could get 20 fewer points, but he can still be a better player as far as what he contributes. I mean, listen, the the Matthew Tkachuk was getting a whole bunch of points last year, and the Florida Panthers were still finding ways to lose games, although not Chucky's fault, but still, you felt like in the beginning of the season last year, you were kind of wasting what Matthew Tkachuk was doing and all the highlight reel goals and plays that he was making and and all. And he's once again he spoke about how he can it's still an opportunity to be better. And this guy's in his prime. He's going to be he's 24 going on 25 this season and if 109 points is the standard for him, man, it's only going to be exciting as far as what he's going to continue to bring, especially under contract for uh 7 more years. And also he was asked about going back to the whole intensity of Paul Maurice in the first few days last year. Matthew Tkachuk was also asked about how that helped last season. And Matthew Tkachuk spoke about how the intensity helped later on in the season. It was really about setting the tone early. And when you get into December, January, the very middle part of the season where sometimes your brain can just be on autopilot. It's just natural for the brain to do that when you're just in the groove of a season, and I can understand that. But as far as the tough parts of the season, especially with, if I remember correctly, the Florida Panthers had like 3 back-to-backs in a 2.5 week span, especially. That was a very tough stretch for the Panthers. And Matthew Tkachuk spoke about how those parts of the season were what the conditioning in training camp helped the Panthers get through those tough times. Like, yeah, I know they battled injuries and they didn't really get healthy until late February, but still to be in the conditioning, I mean, yeah, these are professional athletes, but to get that level of conditioning from the start, even though these guys do have informal skates and 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 it coming from the top as far as the leader of this franchise in Paul Maurice, you could see it's a big compliment from Matthew Tkachuk as far as knowing that this is something that, once again, the standard. And this is a constant theme, like we said in part one of our media availability coverage. It's something that was said over and over again. And it's another way of saying culture too. And that's what the Florida Panthers really do have as far as what's expected out of people who come to this team. But in segment number 2, we are going to discuss what Captain Aleksander Barkov had to say during his media day availability. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about AG1. And our next partner, AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement. It supports whole body health. I drink it literally every day because, once again, I need a little bit of a break from the cafe cubano that I had in Miami. I had quite a bit of it, so I need to take a little bit of a break because I traveled back to my home base in Central Florida. I don't have what's called ventanita culture up here like we do in South Florida, and so instead of drinking that, I drink my AG1, and I did it in the middle of the afternoon as once again, your boy is staying up very late doing both of these shows. So a mid-afternoon AG1 for me is really helpful for energy, recovery, focus, immune system support, all the things. And drinking in the afternoon makes me feel great, and it's like giving my body the nutrition it craves, and all covering the nutritional basis. And if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1 year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. Check it out. Segment number 2 here on this Thursday, September 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So Aleksander Barkov spoke to the media as well on media day. Of course, the captain, that is the expectation. Unfortunately, because there's a lot that goes on media day, not just getting in front of the reporters and asking questions, but it's all about going to the rink and doing all the promos that they're going to be doing on the Jumbotron, the interviews with Bally Sports, especially Miami mic'd up with Jeremy Taché as well. Some preseason interviews as well that Bally Sports is going to play. So everyone was wearing their jerseys and all that stuff. And Aleksander Barkov came in with his jersey. So we did not get an opportunity to see the new hat that he will be debuting this season, because he always wears a signature hat in relation to Florida during his media availabilities after. So still don't know what new cap that he's rocking. So be on the lookout, and we will possibly discuss that here on the show. So asked about second year under Paul Maurice and how he's more accumulated to it, and spoke about how working under the system is great, but no system is good if you don't play hard when it comes to putting it all together. And when it comes to the not playing hard and all, and Paul Maurice calling out the team back in late March, maybe that was an example of the team not playing hard, and that was, a 4-game losing streak at the time, and that was the moment when the Panthers were starting to play better in that system. And Aleksander Barkov was also asked about, once again, the standard, and he spoke about how on ice it's going to be hard, but that no one around the NHL is going to be surprised anymore of what the Florida Panthers bring night in and night out. They know that when opponents do line up across the Panthers, that it's going to be a battle, it's going to be a challenge. And I had an opportunity to ask Aleksander Barkov, without Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad, how much more is going to be asked of him leadership wise, even though knowing that he has the C on his sweater. And Aleksander Barkov revealed something that we didn't know, that no one else actually confirmed. We knew that Montour was rehabbing and all that. And we could also assume that with the rehab videos that he was posting, that he was also skating. But he confirmed something that we didn't know, that Aaron Ekblad is also skating, because everything on the Aaron Ekblad side was quiet as can be. And here's the thing, Aaron Ekblad's one of the few people who stays in South Florida during the offseason. So I'm surprised nothing has gotten out until today, as far as guys putting on the boots and getting on the ice as well. So we at least know that much. but nothing else more as far as that. Paul Maurice did not speak during media day, but I'm sure that's going to be brought up tomorrow on the first day of training camp. Hey, we heard he's skating, and likely Paul Maurice is not going to give us any information. Nothing gets out. But Barkov, going back on that, spoke about how it's just a great overall opportunity for everyone to play better as well, and spoke about his fellow countrymen in Etelö about the extension as well. Spoke about how the sky is the limit for Etu and the guy who was sorely missed through the Stanley Cup final. And I don't think we talk enough about Etelö and him missing as far as being a guy who solidified a role in the third line, and then the amount of juggling that had to happen. And then especially when you put Lundell on the wing, it was basically mostly two functional lines for the Panthers during that Stanley Cup final. And basically, for the Panthers, that loss of Etelö breaking his tibia in the Carolina series just it hurt. It was an injury, and for a guy missing in the Stanley Cup final, it actually, looking back at it in hindsight, it hurt more than we actually believed, as far as Etelö missing from the Panthers. And definitely Barkov wanted to point out that he was sorely missed as well. Spoke about how the team is hungrier and all that, and also discussed about being the Florida Panthers brand growing. And Aleksander Barkov said that he himself is getting recognized more at the grocery store and all that stuff, and all. And I remember there was like a photo of Aleksander Barkov randomly in like a motor scooter, and that was like posted on Twitter/X. Just him looking down like this at a stoplight, something like that. There was that photo that went out. I thought it was just a funny picture. It was like poker face Aleksander Barkov as well. So also, what he was asked about is raising the Prince of Wales trophy banner, given extra fuel for them to make it back to the final. And Aleksander Barkov spoke about how it makes him proud. He's proud to be a Panther, everything that they've been able to build since the day he got here. But one goal is very clear for him, and that it's not the Stanley Cup banner. That's what the guys play for. And it's going to be, yes, it's going to be a lot harder to get back there a second consecutive season and all, but that they know that that's what what they are ultimately working for. And you know, I can only imagine just growing when you think about the postseason. That's two that's 2 months of your season, and you're winning around, you're advancing, you're on an emotional high from advancing round by round. You're giving hope to a region that they're going to bring a championship home, and then to get steamrolled in the final. You're building it up only for it to crash. Yeah, I can understand where Barkov is coming from as far as, yeah, it's not the Stanley Cup. I don't think he's saying that he doesn't care. I don't think he's saying that he doesn't care about the Prince of Wales trophy, but I think, it's not what you play for. It's you play for something a lot bigger than that. So, that's something that you definitely want to hear from the captain, as well as trying to just get back to there. And listen, it's all the hardest part about it is that everyone starts from zero. And speaking of starting from zero, we are going to be transitioning over to segment number 3, where we are going to be discussing what Panthers goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky had to say during his media day availability. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Birddogs. And Birddogs makes you look good. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs fixed this issue by inventing a cloud knit fabric that looks like khakis, but stretches so you can get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Birddogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Birddogs are functional for any occasion. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonNHL or enter promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonNHL for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. Segment number 3 here on this Thursday, September 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day on this part 2 of covering Florida Panthers Media Day. So, last person that we are going to discuss is Sergei Bobrovsky, or as I called him throughout the playoff run, Bob Smythe. And even though the Panthers didn't win the championship, even though he really truly played like someone who was in contention for the Conn Smythe, and man, it's a playoffs to remember for him. And with the resume, the 2 Vezina trophies, I feel good about Sergei Bobrovsky going into this season. And Bob was asked what the rest versus typical seasons of making it all the way to the Stanley Cup and having that shortened off season. And Bobrovsky actually put it in a good perspective as far as coming into this season. Let's not forget when the Florida Panthers got swept by the Tampa Bay Lightning a few seasons ago. The playoff schedule in a normal season, the Panthers going off their Stanley Cup run, they played a normal season. Everything as far as the President's Trophy winning season, everything was pushed back a few weeks. So in actuality, something that Sergei Bobrovsky pointed out was the only difference between that season and this season was 2 weeks. Didn't really think about that until today. And Bob was discussing about knowing what your needs are for the next season and do what's needed. A guy who, and we spoke about obsessive compulsive tendencies, not obsessive compulsive disorders. Something that in relation to Spencer Knight and goalies, how as a goalie you have to have some of those systems in place and routine. And Sergei Bobrovsky was asked about his routine. And basically, Bob was talking about you have a plan, you stick to your plan. And let's once again bring up that Paul Maurice, when it comes to goaltending, he's constantly talking about goaltenders. I don't touch that. I let Robbie Tallis do it. His exact words when it comes to that, because you never want to interfere with a guy and how and what his rhythm is in order to get to like tip top mental shape in order to be able to move laterally as well, track pucks through screens, you name it when it comes to that. And Sergei Bobrovsky, definitely a guy who has things in place, something that we knew even before he signed with the Panthers, before he deleted all of his social media as well. Was asked about Spencer Knight and spoke about how it's great to see him and that he's still gonna support him and all that stuff, and spoke about the what you can build from the Stanley Cup is like something you can build from, but he did emphasize one thing, and this is the stoic mindset that Sergei Bobrovsky has. And truth be told, after the Panthers were eliminated from the Stanley Cup final in 5 games, it took me over a month to finish the quest for the cup. That was from ESPN Plus. One thing I noticed every single time in the Panthers locker room, no matter the moment, even when the Panthers are discussing their starting lineups and all that stuff, everybody's all pumped up, and then you see Sergei Bobrovsky sitting back, just wanting to go out and play hockey, laser focused. It's not just for show, in my opinion, in front of cameras. I think that's truly how Sergei Bobrovsky conducts himself, as far as not being a super loud guy in the room, just the guy who just wants to have his play as far as speaking. And if you guys haven't seen the Quest for the Cup on ESPN Plus, take an opportunity to watch it and observe Sergei Bobrovsky when the Panthers are doing something simple like discussing who the starting lineup is, and everyone's like doing their claps and doing their chants and all that stuff to celebrate who's starting the game and all that stuff. And once again, it it's something that Bob says that they can build, but starts from zero, but it gives you confidence. And that to always be humble in the journey. And spoke about how the Stanley Cup final run, he learned more during that than he did in his first 13 seasons in the league. I mean, listen, he hadn't gotten past the second round in his career. And what I don't think we emphasize enough what Sergei Bobrovsky has done as far as heroics, as far as what he did in Columbus against Tampa Bay, and then starting it off against Boston, coming in mid series, too. When a lot of people, including me, had that doubt of whether he should have gone into game 4 as the starter. Like I said, every single time there has been a threat of his crease being taken away, he's always responded. And he doesn't do it by talking about it and putting on his best season in 2022 with 39 wins, even though goalie wins aren't stats, and being the least of the Panthers' problems in the playoffs. Like, I know $10 million is a huge cap hit, but we do see signs from time to time of that contract possibly being worth it. That Stanley Cup final run uh, gives you a better feeling about it. I mean, obviously, if they won, you don't care about the entirety of the contract, obviously. Um, Once again, Sergei Bobrovsky discusses uh, about him sticking to his routine and the fact that it's something that you, when going into the next season, you never want to just get too low when it comes to losses. And this is going to be a different type of season for him because of the shortened off season, the fact of something else that's coming too. and that is the fact that the clauses of his contract are going to change come this offseason from no move clause to modified no trade as well. So not that it's like something I'm going to approach Sergei Bobrovsky and ask him about it, but he knows that that's in the back of his head, that he knows that he needs to perform as far as that if he wants an opportunity to stay. I mean, for him, I mean, he's going to get that money anyway, unless he gets bought out and gets a lower percentage of it. But as far as future with the team, definitely he doesn't need any more motivation as far as to perform at the highest level. And I hope that the Stanley Cup final run for him is not the ceiling of that entire contract with the Florida Panthers. Hopefully we see even something better of it, and it's going to be exciting to see what Bob is going to be bringing to the table this offseason, this season, especially because now that he has his crease mate back, that is definitely going to be helpful as far as the tandem working together and contributing to wins and hopefully what is another playoff appearance for this Florida Panthers team. But thank you guys so much for listening to part 2 of this media day coverage. And training camp starts today at 9 a.m. at the Ice Den in Coral Springs, where the Florida Panthers will be hosting the fans in a limited capacity as well. And we're going to be back on Friday, pretty late Friday, actually, as Nick Fairbanks is going to be joining us from overseas while on vacation. So if you don't get an episode early on Friday, don't you worry. We are going to get one a little later in the afternoon. So be on the lookout for that. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On AHL network, including Locked On AHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steve Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.